Madagascar should not exist as it does, yet evolution built an entire world here in secret. For millions of years, forests, deserts, reefs, and stone highlands shaped life into forms found nowhere else on Earth. At dawn, Indri cries roll through wet trees while ancient baobabs hold entire seasons of water inside their trunks. Yet the deepest mystery lives in the people, whose Asian and African roots meet through language, kinship, memory, and ancestral belief. What moves me most is the ceremony, where families welcome their dead back into sunlight, music, laughter, and loving arms. To understand how such a world survives, we must follow its animals, villages, forests, and voices into Madagascar's living heart. Madagascar spent millions of years apart, allowing evolution to follow paths that vanished everywhere else on Earth. Across one island, rainforests drip with moisture, while limestone blades, dry canyons, high plateaus, and coral seas form separate worlds. Lemurs call through the eastern canopy. Baobabs store life inside swollen trunks, and tiny reptiles disappear between leaves. The people carry both African and Austronesian ancestry, preserving an ocean-crossing history within language, food, music, and family traditions. Here, survival depends not only on strength, but on reading rain, respecting taboos, sharing labor, and remembering the dead. Some landscapes inspire wonder, yet others reveal a more troubling truth about disappearing forests and increasingly uncertain seasons. Ancient stories remain attached to trees, tombs, animals, and stones, making the island feel inhabited by memory as much as life. Our journey begins where the ground itself becomes a fortress of sharpened rock, hiding valleys that sunlight rarely reaches. Tsingy de Bemaraha rises from western Madagascar like a frozen storm of limestone, sharp enough to turn distance into a warning. Rainwater slowly dissolved the ancient seabed, widening cracks until countless pinnacles, shafts, corridors, and hidden chambers emerged. From above, the formations resemble an abandoned stone city, although no architect could have designed passages this narrow or irregular. At ground level, every step demands attention, because the surface can cut clothing, skin, and even climbing equipment. Rope bridges cross gaps where vegetation gathers far below, creating a strange mixture of exhilaration and quiet unease. The Malagasy word tingi is often linked to walking carefully on tiptoe, an image perfectly suited to this unforgiving terrain. What appears lifeless from a distance shelters lemurs, birds, reptiles, and plants adapted to isolated pockets of soil. Some trees send roots through cracks for many meters, searching for moisture trapped deep beneath the heated stone. Caves and underground passages preserve cooler air, giving wildlife refuge from the severe conditions above. Local stories sometimes treat the formations as protected ground, where ancestors and unseen forces still command respect. That belief feels understandable, because the stone seems less like scenery than a boundary humans enter only with permission. The most powerful impression comes from its silence, interrupted by wind slipping through thousands of narrow openings. Yet this silence is deceptive, because water continues shaping the limestone whenever the rains return. Tingi records geological time through erosion, but it also exposes how little control people possess over difficult landscapes. Beyond these famous pinnacles, another limestone world waits in the north, where caves swallow rivers beneath the forest. Lemurs survived in Madagascar after disappearing from almost every other place where their distant relatives once lived. More than 100 species now occupy forests, scrublands, bamboo zones, and dry valleys across the island. Mouse lemurs can fit inside a human hand, while Indri announce themselves with voices that travel through the canopy. Sifakas cross open ground sideways, lifting their arms for balance in movements that appear playful but conserve precious energy. Ring-tailed lemurs warm themselves after cold nights, sitting upright while sunlight spreads across their pale stomachs. Their social lives include grooming, warning calls, territorial disputes, and bonds far more complex than their expressive faces suggest. It is difficult to watch them without warmth, yet that affection becomes uncomfortable when their shrinking habitats come into view. Their future depends on forests that are being divided faster than many populations can safely adapt. Madagascar holds an exceptional variety of chameleons, ranging from heavy forest giants to species scarcely longer than a fingernail. Their eyes move separately, allowing one to examine nearby prey while the other watches for danger. A tongue can launch with astonishing speed, turning a quiet branch into the scene of an almost invisible hunt. Color changes do more than provide camouflage. They communicate stress, readiness, temperature, rivalry, and courtship. Panther chameleons display regional patterns so distinct that neighboring populations may look like entirely different creations. There is something captivating about an animal moving slowly while its body conducts a vivid conversation. Yet the smaller the habitat becomes, the less room remains for these highly specialized languages of color. The fossa is Madagascar's largest native carnivore, combining a cat-like body with movements closer to a mongoose. Flexible ankles allow it to descend trees headfirst, while a long tail steadies every leap between branches. Popular stories often cast it as a villain, but forests would lose balance without this efficient hunter. Its rarity gives every surviving individual a weight far greater than its modest physical size. Madagascar's frogs include brilliant mantellas, leaf-colored species, and burrowing forms adapted to sharply different environments. Their sensitivity to temperature and water makes them living indicators of changes that humans may notice too late. After meeting these isolated animals, the island's human ancestry feels like another evolutionary mystery waiting to be understood. Madagascar lies beside Africa, yet the Malagasy language carries roots that lead eastward across the Indian Ocean. Genetic and linguistic evidence points toward both East African communities and Austronesian voyagers arriving from Southeast Asia. Their meeting created a population whose features, customs, crops, and stories cannot be reduced to one continent. Rice cultivation reflects Asian connections, while cattle traditions and many coastal practices preserve deep African influences. 18 major ethnic groups are officially recognized, each shaped by different landscapes and histories. Highland communities developed kingdoms around terraced fields, while coastal peoples built livelihoods through fishing, trade, and navigation. The principle of Fihavanana places mutual responsibility at the center of social life, extending family obligations beyond blood relationships. This ideal becomes most visible when neighbors share labor during planting, construction, illness, or ceremonial gatherings. It inspires admiration because cooperation here is not presented as generosity alone, but as a practical method of survival. Alongside it exists Fadi, a network of local taboos governing behavior toward animals, places, families, and ancestral spirits. Outsiders may find some restrictions puzzling, yet dismissing them would overlook centuries of social meaning. To understand Madagascar, one must listen not only to spoken explanations, but also to the rules people choose not to break. Before sunrise in Andasibe Mantadia, the forest is hidden behind mist, dripping leaves, and layers of indistinct movement. Then an Indri calls, and the sound crosses the trees with a force that seems too large for its body. Other groups answer from distant territories, transforming the valley into an invisible map drawn entirely through sound. Beneath them, chameleons cling to wet branches while frogs occupy leaves shining with rain. Diademid sifacas move through the canopy in long leaps, their pale fur briefly catching the morning light. What stays with the listener is not only the volume, but the sudden silence after the final call ends. In that pause, the forest feels vulnerable, as though one missing voice would alter the entire morning. Andasibe, therefore, offers more than wildlife sightings. It reveals how sound can become evidence that a habitat still functions. Renomafana descends through steep rainforest, where warm rain, tangled roots, bamboo, and river mist complicate every trail. The discovery of the golden bamboo lemur helped transform this region into a protected national park. Its diet includes bamboo containing chemical compounds that would be dangerous to many other animals. That adaptation inspires respect, but it also ties the species tightly to a habitat with few substitutes. Each cleared slope beyond the forest boundary makes this extraordinary specialization feel increasingly fragile. Masawala protects a vast meeting point where eastern rainforest approaches mangroves, beaches, coral waters, and storm-exposed headlands. Heavy rainfall gives the peninsula abundance, yet its remoteness makes protection, transport, and healthcare difficult for nearby communities. From this saturated green world, the journey turns west, toward trees built to endure months without reliable rain. Near Morondava, towering baobabs rise beside a red earth track, their trunks widening before narrowing abruptly into sparse branches. They are Adansonia grandidieri, one of several baobab species found only in Madagascar. Their internal tissues store water, allowing mature trees to endure long dry periods that weaken surrounding vegetation. This practical design has produced a silhouette so unusual that it seems assembled in reverse. One widespread tale says the baobab was planted upside down after its endless complaints angered the creator. The story is playful, yet it captures the strange impression created by branches resembling exposed roots. Malagasy communities call the baobab Renala, meaning mother of the forest, a name carrying affection, respect, and dependence. Some trees stand near burial grounds or places connected with ancestral memory, giving them importance beyond botany. The avenue itself is a remnant of a larger forest, cleared over generations for agriculture and settlement. That knowledge changes the scene, because the celebrated trees are also survivors standing inside an absence. At sunset, their dark trunks divide the orange light, while carts, cyclists, and villagers continue along the road. The ordinary traffic prevents the landscape from becoming a postcard detached from local life. Beauty here is inseparable from loss, and that tension lingers longer than the fading colors. When darkness arrives, the baobabs remain visible as enormous silhouettes guarding a landscape they once shared with thousands more. Farther north, the Chingi holds water differently, directing rain through fractures into caves, wells, and hidden underground channels. Plants survive by rooting inside crevices where thin soil remains protected from the strongest heat. The arrangement feels severe, yet every pocket of moisture becomes an argument for persistence. Stone and drought then give way to Isalo, where hidden pools gather beneath sandstone walls. Andringitra rises above cultivated valleys, where granite mountains interrupt terraces, villages, grasslands, and seasonal rivers. The massif includes some of Madagascar's highest accessible terrain, with weather changing rapidly between exposed slopes and sheltered valleys. At lower elevations, Betsileo communities have shaped hillsides into rice terraces that follow the contours of the land. These fields are not decorative geometry. They are carefully engineered systems for holding soil and distributing water. Stone walls, narrow paths, and irrigation channels record generations of labor that rarely appears in scenic photographs. Higher above, the landscape becomes colder and less forgiving, reducing crops and shelter to isolated patches. Zebu herders cross open ground where cloud shadows can move faster than the animals themselves. The sight creates admiration, not because life appears romantic, but because every routine depends on difficult calculations. A failed rain, blocked path, or livestock illness can carry consequences through an entire season. Andringitra shows that the highlands are both a source of beauty and a demanding agricultural machine. Much of the food produced across these uplands eventually moves toward Antananarivo's markets, kitchens, roadside stalls, and crowded neighborhoods. Rice dominates daily meals so completely that eating often becomes almost synonymous with eating rice. Vendors serve cakes, greens, grilled meat, fruit, and coffee to commuters beginning work before the city fully brightens. From higher districts, urban roofs overlook paddies cultivated within and around the capital itself. This closeness between fields and concrete makes the city feel unfinished, yet also unusually connected to its food supply. The contrast is striking. National decisions are made on hills still surrounded by farmers standing ankle-deep in water. Before dawn, coastal fishermen push pirogues across wet sand while darkness still hides the condition of the sea. Some belong to Vezo communities, whose identity has long been linked to movement, fishing, and knowledge of southwestern waters. Sails catch the early wind, carrying narrow boats beyond lagoons and protective reefs. Fishers read currents through surface patterns, bird behavior, cloud formations, and experience passed between generations. Nets, hooks, lines, and traps vary according to species, depth, season, and available equipment. The work demands patience because hours of searching may produce only a small catch. On difficult days, returning safely matters more than filling the boat, especially when winds strengthen unexpectedly. Children often learn basic skills near shore before accompanying older relatives into deeper water. Women commonly process, dry, sell, or trade the catch, making fishing a household economy rather than an individual occupation. Markets reveal the entire chain through baskets of reef fish, octopus, shellfish, seaweed, and smoked products. There is warmth in this cooperation, but also anxiety, because depleted reefs and changing weather reduce certainty. Conservation rules can protect future catches, yet they may create immediate hardship when alternative income remains limited. The dignity of these communities lies in adaptation, not in an idealized image of effortless island life. Nosy Be presents a different coastal economy, where fishing villages share space with resorts, dive boats, plantations, and perfume production. Ylang-ylang flowers scent parts of the island, connecting local agriculture with international fragrance markets. Coral reefs support marine life and tourism, but they also face pressure from warming water, pollution, and heavy use. The island's calm bays can feel generous, though that calm depends upon ecosystems far more delicate than they appear. Beyond the shoreline, Madagascar's deepest relationships continue inland, where family includes those no longer physically present. In many Malagasy communities, death changes a person's place within the family without completely removing their presence. Ancestors are believed to influence health, fortune, land, marriage, and the moral balance of descendants. Tombs therefore receive attention not only during funerals, but across generations of family life. The best-known highland ceremony is Famadihana, often translated as the turning of the bones. At intervals decided by families and circumstances, relatives gather to reopen an ancestral tomb. Remains are carefully lifted, rewrapped in fresh silk cloth, and identified so names do not disappear from memory. Music begins, relatives speak about the dead, and the wrapped ancestors may be carried in a communal procession. To an outsider, joy beside human remains may seem contradictory or even disturbing. Yet the ceremony is not an attempt to deny death. It restores the dead to an active family gathering, The most moving element is the care devoted to recognition, because forgetting is treated as a second and deeper loss. Participation also renews relationships among living relatives who may have traveled great distances to return. Famadihana transforms grief into responsibility, reminding each generation that belonging continues beyond individual lifetimes. Around Antananarivo, royal tombs and sacred hills connect national history with the same respect for ancestral authority. Ambo-Himanga remains a place of pilgrimage, where visitors may encounter offerings, prayers, and rules older than modern institutions. The capital's crowded present, therefore, stands beside a spiritual geography that has never entirely receded. Madagascar's cultural mixture becomes especially clear when music begins and food reaches the table. The valiha, a bamboo tube zither, carries audible connections with instruments found across parts of Southeast Asia. Coastal rhythms introduce stronger African and Indian Ocean influences through drums, guitars, accordions, and call-and-response singing. Neither tradition cancels the other. Together, they preserve the roots through which Madagascar's population was formed. This layering gives everyday celebrations the depth of an unwritten migration archive. In Antananarivo, breakfast may begin with mofo gasi, a lightly sweet rice cake cooked in round metal molds. Romazava combines meat and leafy greens into a warming dish frequently served with generous portions of rice. Ravitoto uses crushed cassava leaves, often cooked slowly with pork until the flavors become earthy and dense. These dishes feel comforting because their importance comes from repetition, family memory, and availability rather than elaborate presentation. Around Andasibe-Mantadia, wildlife tourism has made standing forest economically valuable to guides, lodges, drivers, artisans, and nearby households. Local guides recognize calls, feeding trees, tracks, and seasonal movements that visitors would otherwise overlook. Their knowledge turns a brief sighting into a deeper understanding of animal behavior and habitat. Yet tourism revenue does not automatically reach every family living beside protected land. Restrictions on farming or forest use can create resentment when communities bear costs without receiving meaningful benefits. Conservation becomes convincing only when education, employment, healthcare, and local authority develop beside protection. The industry's survival, therefore, depends as much on human trust as on biological research. Rainomofauna demonstrates how scientific discovery can bring international attention, funding, and visitors to a remote forest. Research stations document species while park workers protect habitats from hunting, logging, and agricultural expansion. However, poverty outside the boundary cannot be solved by patrols alone. Community projects become essential because families need alternatives that remain practical beyond short funding cycles. The park's future will be measured not only by lemur numbers, but by whether neighboring people gain stability. Isalo's dry season hardens trails, exposes cliffs, and concentrates animals around the few dependable water sources. When rain returns, streams rise quickly, and valleys that seemed empty can change within hours. This instability makes water both a gift and a hazard across the southern interior. Masawala experiences the opposite extreme, receiving heavy rainfall that feeds dense forest and powerful rivers. Cyclones can strike the peninsula, damaging homes, crops, roads, boats, and communication links. After a storm, isolation complicates rescue and recovery for communities separated by forest and sea. Abundance, therefore, carries its own vulnerability, because too much water can be as destructive as too little. In Andringitra, altitude introduces cold nights, fog, strong wind, and sudden shifts that challenge both farmers and trekkers. Rainfall determines terrace planting, pasture quality, river flow, and the timing of journeys between villages. The mountains teach patience because schedules remain secondary to weather. Coastal fishermen adjust departure times according to wind, swell, storms, and the availability of target species. A forecast can prevent disaster, but many small boats still operate with limited communication equipment. Climate uncertainty makes inherited knowledge less reliable when familiar seasons begin behaving differently. Survival increasingly requires combining ancestral observation with modern warnings and conservation planning. Nosy B changes character when whale sharks arrive in surrounding waters during their seasonal movements. Their spotted bodies can stretch longer than small boats, yet they feed primarily on plankton and tiny organisms. Swimming near one creates tension between excitement and restraint, because approaching too closely can disturb the animal. Responsible operators limit contact, avoid blocking movement, and treat every encounter as uncertain rather than guaranteed. Humpback whales may also pass through Madagascar's waters, announcing themselves through blows, tail movements, and sudden breaches. A few seconds at the surface can become the emotional center of an entire journey. What makes these encounters precious is precisely their refusal to follow a tourist timetable. The sea offers no performance on demand. It rewards preparation, patience, and luck. In Andasibe, the most memorable moment often arrives before the animals are visible. An Indri call enters the mist, grows through the valley, and then vanishes before its source can be located. That brief sound gives the forest a scale no photograph can explain. Missing the early morning means missing the atmosphere that makes the encounter complete. The generally drier months from April through October offer more reliable roads and easier access to many parks. Wildlife priorities matter because whale sharks, humpbacks, lemur births, flowering cycles, and cultural ceremonies occur in different periods. Antananarivo serves as the principal gateway, but domestic distances often require flights, long drives, or both. Road conditions can turn a short map distance into an entire day, so itineraries need generous buffers. Basic local travel can remain affordable, while domestic flights, private vehicles, park guides, and remote lodges raise costs quickly. Budget, mid-range, and comfortable plans should therefore be calculated separately, with current prices checked before booking. Cash remains useful outside major cities, although travelers should divide it securely and avoid displaying large amounts. Health preparation should include updated medical advice, insect protection, suitable insurance, and any current entry requirements. Respect requires asking before photographing people, following local fadi, and never treating ceremonies as staged entertainment. Madagascar rewards travelers who accept difficult logistics because its greatest value lies in encounters that cannot be reproduced elsewhere. After all we have seen, Madagascar still feels less like an island than a world that chose its own rules. Its stone forests, baobabs, reefs, and highlands reveal how isolation can create abundance while making every habitat fragile. What stays with me most is how people answer that fragility, with shared labor, ancestral memory, and patience shaped by uncertain seasons. Here, survival is never only biological. It is carried through language, ritual, food, fishing, farming, and respect for the unseen. Perhaps the hardest truth is that the island's rarest wonders now depend on choices made far beyond their forests and villages. Long after the Indri's call fades, Madagascar leaves one question behind: how much of this singular world will still be here?